Hi-ho, Muppet friends! It's Dan the Frog here with over an hour and a half of non-stop Muppet history. That's right, it's an all-in-one compilation of my best Muppet episodes, including a full puppet history of Kermit the Frog, Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, Gonzo the Great, and Animal. So sit back, relax, enjoy your Muppet popcorn, and roll that tape. Hi-ho, Muppet fans! It's Kermit the Frog here with another. No, I can't lie to you guys. It's Dan. Don't. What's going on, guys? It's Dan here with another episode of DIStory, and this time we're looking at the history of my dear friend Kermit the Frog. Hi, Kermit. As you can see behind me, this is just a sample of my Kermit collection that's just littering this set right now. Puppets were a really big part of my life for a really long time. I went to school for theater, I started building puppets in high school, and I really look up to Jim Henson. He just liked to have fun ideas and make fun things with his friends, and I really like to do that as well. And also, really important, this video was selected by Marcus Berard, who won the Charityland 2019 auction for picking a Disney Dan video topic. He won, he donated some money to Give Kids the World, it was super awesome, and he was like, hey, evolution of Kermit, and I'm like, hey buddy, you're speaking my language. So thanks Marcus for that donation, really appreciate it, man. It's going to a really great cause. So to start at the beginning of Kermit the Frog, we have to go all the way back to 1955, the same year that Disneyland was built, because a very young Jim Henson in Washington, D.C., back home, was rummaging through his mother's rag bag, is what she called it, essentially a bag of old clothing. And in that bag, he found this old turquoise coat, had a couple of ping pong balls, and he cut that coat up, sewed it up, did a dance, and made some magic. Instantly created history, right, with Kermit. But back then, Kermit wasn't a frog. Kermit was more of an abstract lizard. And the reason for that was because he was part of a public access show that a very young Jim Henson created called Sam and Friends, where we had Sam, this humanoid character, and the wild amount of ridiculous characters inside Sam's brain. There were all these kind of abstract characters, and Kermit was one of them.
Her name is Luna, she's a peach, but don't leave food within her reach, or baby.
Originally, Kermit didn't even have a voice. It wasn't Jim Henson's voice. Sam and Friends was mostly lip-syncing to comedy albums, children albums, you know, pre-produced stuff. It was just a fun way to make fun of songs, records, comedy bits, comedy sketches, but interpreted them differently with abstract characters and weird scenarios. And that was on WRC-TV. So the first Kermit that Jim built for Sam and Friends for this public access show was really nothing more than a glorified sock puppet. It was just a long tube with a mouth at the end that was just two pieces of cardboard kind of glued into some fabric to give the mouth a little bit of rigidity, but otherwise it was just an arm and a hand covered in fabric. And Jim Henson had massive hands, huge hands, to the chagrin of many a puppeteer later in life that needed to puppeteer Kermit while Jim was on stage doing another character. And so what you ended up getting was this very articulate kind of expressions and movements in the head and face of Kermit the Frog, because it was literally all four of Jim's fingers kind of morphing and moving and changing up and down. So it took about 10 years for Kermit to figure out that he was a frog, right? It took Kermit about 10 years to find his legs. But boom. Okay, I cannot give myself my own rim shots in the episodes. That's just not gonna work.
Remember Kermit the Frog?
Yeah. It wasn't until Johnny Carson introduced Kermit as Kermit the Frog in December of 1965 that Kermit kind of became identified as a frog. And when these characters became so popular on this public access show, it didn't take long for the news to get all the way up to New York. And before he knew it, Jim was on the Ed Sullivan Show or with Johnny Carson performing these Muppet bits for the nation. It wasn't just a Washington, D.C. local thing anymore. And as Kermit began to grow up, he was rebuilt shortly after his big national TV spots started to drop, as he started to appear at all these talk shows. And he got this red sweater, right? They just threw him in this random red sweater, maybe to give him a little contrast, have him stand out on TV. The first toy that was made of Kermit in 1966 was him wearing his red sweater. But hey, when is he gonna get green again, right? He didn't sing a song, It's Not Easy Wearing a Red Sweater, all right? And that happens. That happens just shortly after that in the late 60s when a little thing called Sesame Street starts to get created, right? Joan Gans Cooney in the late 60s is like, hey, let's start to create this developmental show for children that's educational, that's smart, that's actually going to benefit children. But how are we going to make this fun? How are we going to make this interesting? And the answer to that was puppets. And so they wrestled up Jim Henson and brought him on board. And Jim started to create a bunch of original characters for the show. Bert and Ernie, Big Bird, Snuffleupagus. But a couple of characters from his original kind of catalog of Muppets kind of came along with them, primarily Kermit, right? So Kermit came to Sesame Street, but he never was officially a Sesame Street character. He was kind of like a visitor. As long as Jim was around, Kermit could be around. And with Sesame Street's late 60s premiere, we got a brand new Kermit, right? Kermit gets kind of completely rebuilt. This is where we get the iconic green Kermit collar, okay? He didn't always have it. As you've seen so far, we've been missing that collar. He ditches that sweater and he throws on this collar. And what this collar does is really help hide the otherwise very obvious neck seam around where the head of the puppet connects with the body of the sewn puppet. And here, now as Kermit's being rebuilt, we lose that whole kind of sock puppet design, and Kermit begins to get more of a shape. He gets a belly that's built out with a little bit of foam, makes him a really fun, versatile character. And his time on the street was spent, as the news reporter.
Pardon me, sir. Can you tell me, are you really indeed Prince Charming?
And Kermit was huge on Sesame Street. He was a huge character. He was super, super popular.
What he's talking about, my dear girl, is simply that he is a frog.
When Kermit appeared in this made-for-TV special called Hey Cinderella, right after the second season of Sesame Street, there's this big uproar about the commercialism of Kermit the Frog. But when he came back after that controversy, again, he got another rebuild. And one of the big significant kind of changes in that rebuild was his collar kind of got dual layered. He went and got a nice contrasting color around his neck instead of that matching green tone. And so by adding that yellow layer and kind of separating and differentiating that color palette, it made Kermit stand out a little bit more. The collar didn't last long, and it disappeared shortly after it appeared. Another thing that they did was they kind of tweaked and modified the eye placement of his eyes to kind of play around a little bit with the eye focus of the character. Because as a puppeteer, when you're working and puppeteering into a camera, you have a monitor below you underneath the set, so you can kind of see where your character is looking. And the thing with Kermit was he was a frog, and frogs are these wide-eyed, things. Their eyes are kind of looking in two different directions, right? So how they catch flies so gosh darn good. As that character became more human and less abstract, one of the things they did was kind of focus its eyes more inward to the point of its face. And this is a thing that they call the Henson triangle, or the eye focus triangle. And what you're doing is, hey, hold on one second, I have a friend to help me. So what that means is essentially, yes, I happen to have a 5-foot-tall Kermit plush. Deal with it. What you see happen in the Sesame Street third season rebuild is that his eyes kind of are turned in a little bit more to match up with the tip of the nose. And you can see that if you put the pupil to the pupil to the tip of the nose, it forms a triangle, right? And that allows the puppeteer to kind of understand where the tip of the puppet's nose is in relation to his hand. You can then very quickly understand where your character is looking, and it really helps establish a more life to the character. Sesame Street takes off. It's a huge success, and we're moving into the late 70s now, where Jim branches off of Sesame Street and wants to make something a little bit more adult, something a little bit more fun and entertaining, because that's what he was used to doing with, the public access and Sam and Friends. It wasn't necessarily a kid's show, but puppets were involved, and Sesame Street really kind of set the stage of being like, puppets are for children, and Jim wanted to kind of break through that and be like, no, they're for everybody. There were some Muppet specials he did, the Muppet Valentine's special, Muppet Sex and Violence, just two specials that, kind of didn't really take off and get seen or appreciated. And one of the interesting things about both those specials was Kermit was not the host of either of those specials. Kermit was a background character, just another one of the gang.
It's the Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Mr. Steve Martin.
And it wasn't until the Muppet Show, making this kind of variety hour hosted by Kermit, where you lived backstage and on stage and just all the antics ensued, that we got Kermit as the leading man of the Muppets. They really solidified the look of Kermit here in the Muppet Show. In fact, the look that Kermit kind of gets is the look that almost kind of endures forever, more or less. His collar gets a little bit tweaked, to removing it from a 13 point to an 11 point, making each of those little triangles just a little bit wider, a little bit thicker. And then boom, lock set, we now have the iconic Kermit that we kind of have forever. But that doesn't mean they don't tweak him, doesn't mean they don't do some strange things with Kermit, and doesn't mean that we don't get some weird Kermit variants. With that, with the riveting success of the Muppet Show, I can't do it with a straight face, man. The late 70s, 1979, with the riveting success of the Muppet Show, the Muppets now get to go to the big screen. And that movie was a huge hit, right? Everyone loves that original Muppet movie, and it had a pretty iconic Kermit moment in there. Kermit on a bike, right? I mean, everyone loves that Kermit on a bike scene. And this wasn't actually the first time Kermit's been on a bike. All the way back in the Muppets Valentine special, there was a little vignette of Kermit riding a bike, but that was done by these little rod puppets. There was just someone under the set with a little rod rolling it forward. Later in Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, we see Kermit riding a bike, but again, that's a smaller scale Kermit done with a little marionette over top of that little miniature set. But when the Muppet movie happened, we had a full-size Kermit on a full-size bike. The way that they did that is kind of incredible, with huge cranes, and they were massive marionettes. That's all they were. They were just propped up by really large strings when Kermit and Miss Piggy were kind of riding solo. But later, when you see them in a group, they went even further with their cleverness. And what do you do when you have multiple bikes that you need to keep upright? Well, you just attach them together with long metal rods. And so they had all those Muppets in those group scenes all just attached together on real bikes, by the way, with their feet just attached to the pedals and the handlebars rigged up so that when the bikes were all pulled forward, all the Muppets just looked like they were pedaling and having a good time, bouncing along that arc path. Absolute genius that they kind of came up with. The Great Muppet Caper, we have a lot of fun. You know, there's robberies, there's musical numbers, but there's something interesting to take a look at in this movie, and it's Kermit's fabric, the fabric that he's built out of. The really cool thing about the fleece that they make the puppets out of is that it's designed in a way that if you use a very specific kind of stitch, which everyone calls the Henson stitch, or it might also be called a ladder stitch if you're more familiar with traditional sewing terms, they're able to sew the fleece together in a way that makes seams almost disappear. In fact, sometimes if it's done really, really well, you can't tell where the puppet's seams are, right? I mean, if you think about it, these puppets are made out of flat materials, foam and fabric, and then are sewn and glued in ways to make them round and 3D shapes. What's really cool about Antron fleece is that it's dual layered, almost like carpet, right? Imagine those carpet samples you sat on the floor of in elementary school when you were a kid, and how they had that hard plastic backing underneath it, and then all the loose fibers were kind of stitched through it. That's kind of similar to how Antron fleece works. It's a plush fabric that is rolled through a lot of grinders that lifts the pill of the fabric up, but it still leaves this thin underlying kind of material that you can sew into. And so if you sew together those bottom pieces and then fluff up the top, what you end up with is a very clean line that's very hard to see, specifically on camera if it's lit and shot well. And as we remember here with my good friend Kermit, you can see he has a big line right down the center of his face. In the Muppet Caper movie, Kermit has a lot of scenes where that seam in particular is stitched a little bit roughly. It wasn't necessarily picked and brushed. And Kermit's very pilly in that movie. He's very fuzzy. He's got a lot of like a couch cushion after 2 decades of people sitting on it. How it gets all kind of fuzzy, and you got to get one of those things as seen on TV, and it shaves it. You shave your pillows because that's a thing people do now. They go out and shave their pillows. Well, the same thing happens to Muppets. The fleece gets fuzzy, and in Great Muppet Caper, you can kind of see that fuzz getting in the way of the efficiency of that line hiding. Mid-80s, we get Muppets Take Manhattan, and we get a very defining moment in the history of Muppets, right? The Muppet Babies, okay? We get this cut-to fantasy scene of all the Muppets as children. Why Kermit isn't a tadpole, I have no really good answer for you. And they made these adorable little baby Muppets. They're so, you just want to Ooh. And then they had those McDonald's toys, and everyone had them. Everyone had a small plush Fozzie, Piggy, or Kermit that smelled of fry oil that we all loved, and was a really smart marketing plan by McDonald's to get children to cuddle with things that smell like their food. Just absolutely genius. We haven't seen that level of marketing, I don't think, since. It's like if every Happy Meal came with a fry-scented Yankee candle. You know what I mean? It's like, go home and light up the scent of fry. But the Muppet Babies, right? They were so big that they got animated, right? The Muppets became a cartoon show. And now it's 2020 and the Muppet Babies are still on TV. That's how absolutely iconic they are. That's not the only big thing that happens in 1984, okay? 1984 is a big year for the Muppets because we get Muppets Take Manhattan, we get Muppets Babies, but then we also get Muppets on Tour. That's right. And they had articulated, full-bodied Muppets. The Sesame Street characters kind of doing this with Ice Follies. They were appearing in touring shows and kind of gaining some popularity. So it kind of made sense to take the Muppets out on tour for big musical numbers with, big dance productions and sets and special effects. And it was so popular, it ran for 2 years. And then they translated that touring company into a Muppet Babies live tour. All the characters are a little strange. Kermit, there's just something about hands that are that size with fingers that are that long that just shouldn't happen, all right? It just shouldn't happen. They tried that out with Dr. Facilier when he was appearing in the parks with these super long, ganky fingers. I've talked about it before in another video. And my goodness, long fingers with costume characters is just not a very pleasant thing to experience.
Oh my gosh, it's time for the show. Where is everybody?
In 1990, in Hollywood studios, we get a live Muppet show in the parks, okay? And this comes at a very tragic time in Muppets history because Disney was trying to buy the Muppets. Jim was going to sell it, sign a creative contract with Disney, start making movies. There was lots planned in the parks. The Muppets were going to take over Disneyland at one point. If you haven't watched the Defunctland episode of Muppet Land, that's one that I was very involved with. So you definitely want to check that out because it tells the story of the 1990 kind of deal and what the Muppets were going to do in the park and take over Disneyland. By the time Jim passed, there was already a lot of stuff in production for the parks, such as Here Come the Muppets, the live show. Mickey's like, hey, I gave you a show, how's it going? And Kermit's like, hey, it's going great. And no Muppets are there. And then eventually the monorail crashes into the Hollywood studios for no one. There's no attack. The monorail, there's no, I don't know how Dr. Teeth, the Electric Mayhem Band showed up at Hollywood studios in the monorail, but they did. And it's fantastic. It's such a great show. But Kermit's fingers are so gosh darn unsettling. In the 2000s, when they brought Kermit back into the parks for just a hot second, celebrating 100 years of magic, they brought Kermit back out, and he kept the long fingers, but also he got the thickest neck, the thickest, most unsettling neck. Kermit just doesn't work like this, guys. We need to stop trying to translate Kermit into a walk-around character. It's not going to work ever. Please stop. Everyone, please stop.
Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here, and welcome to Muppet Vision 3D.
Muppet Vision 3D was the last thing that Jim performed as Kermit and directed, and so it's kind of this very iconic place in Muppet history for being this last performance of Kermit by Jim. The fire truck that comes in at the end with that Kermit on the end of the fire truck, really great example of another variation of an RC-controlled Kermit that was being puppeteered off stage behind the camera, but was this really great little articulate robot that Jim was able to puppeteer. Muppet Vision 3D is just one of the best parts of the parks. I mean, really, I absolutely love Muppet Vision. It's one of the best attractions. The early 90s, we get this passing of the torch from Jim puppeteering Kermit to Steve Whitmire puppeteering Kermit, and the change begins to happen where we begin to realize very clearly that it wasn't just Kermit that was the star. It wasn't the Muppets that were the star, but Jim Henson himself was an iconic superstar. Everyone knew who he was, and everyone was in love with him. Losing him really impacted the role of Kermit with the Muppets and kind of impacted the Muppets in general, because after Jim went, the movies then quickly became about the human star of the movie, because the Muppets just didn't have the star power to keep their own movies afloat. And the Muppets kind of became a cover band. Mid-90s, we kind of get Muppets Tonight. Kermit kind of stays the same. There's a little bit of a modification with the build on his head. His head shape changes a little bit. His eye focus, again, is tweaked once again. The location of his eyes are moved. In the early 2000s, we get Swamp Ears, right? We get to see what Kermit looks like as a teenager. And he just is so gosh darn cute. And they do some really fun stuff by making his eyes a little bit bigger for the smaller puppet to give him this kind of more of a youthful look with the placement of the eyes, the size of the eyes, because that's why we think babies are adorable. They have gigantic eyes and tiny heads. And that's the same way that Muppet babies work, and also the same way that little teenager Kermit or little young Kermit, who finally left the swamp and started talking to humans for the first time. A few years later, we get Muppets Wizard of Oz, and we get a really fun variant of Kermit as Scarecrow Kermit. Kermit is so iconically simple and recognizable. They can play with the simple idea of Kermit and say dress him up like a scarecrow or give him a bunch of teeth and have him be a big scary dinosaur. It's really incredible how universal the design elements of Kermit kind of translate into whatever kind of variants they want to make. In 2010, the Muppets hosted a huge event for Walt Disney World with volunteering. In fact, if you volunteered for a day of your time to a charity, specific charities, what you ended up getting was a day in the parks for free. And the campaign was hosted by the Muppets. And there was a parade in the parks with all the volunteers that was led by Kermit and Piggy in their own unique parade vehicle. And this was a new Kermit that was built specifically for the parks that was bigger than any Kermit had ever been built before. It was probably about 120 to 130% larger than say the standard Kermit, because it was really high up on a float so that they read a little bit better from the top of that parade float. Disney's all about forced perspective, right? He's just really built strong because he's practically weatherproof, because he was outdoors a lot, being used quite regularly. The thing you might not realize about puppets in general is that they tend to break down and become in need of desperate repair after a certain point of time. You can do that. You can skin a puppet, completely rebuild its innards, replace all the foam, replace all the hinges, then re-sew everything back up. Things like theme park puppets, that's not necessarily in the budget. So they're going to build these things like tanks. And so this was a little bit of a Kerm tunk. The minute I said that he was built like a tank, I then knew that I had to combine the words Kermit and tank, but I couldn't figure out what it would sound like, what that word would sound like in my head. And the minute that it came out of my mouth, I was so in love with it. So this puppet was essentially the Kertunk. And Kertunk lives on. Boo. Muppets Most Wanted had an interesting kind of twist on Kermit with Constantine, right? Performed by Matt Vogel, who now is the primary performer of Kermit, took over for Steve in 2017. And what's really fun about Constantine is that they just make very minor modifications to the design of Kermit. Again, commenting on the simplicity of Kermit, just by taking his eyes and twisting them inward a little bit, kind of like, cartoon eyebrows when they're a little bit more menacing. When Matt Vogel puppeteered him, he kind of kept the nose pointed down where Kermit's nose is always forward and, having a good time. Very, very minor performance variations and then design variations to differentiate Constantine and Kermit the Frog. Of course, that mole, right, obviously. But if you don't think about that mole, there are other things that went into making Constantine stand out and be unique. Another thing about Muppets Most Wanted in that movie is we got old Kermit, right? We have a really wide range of what Kermit looks like throughout his entire life. So there you go, there's Kermit. He had a lot of changes for someone as so simple, but those changes were very subtle over the years to refine that character and make him more streamlined, more fun and friendly and connectable. And what's really kind of tragic was losing Jim and losing that presence and that status that Jim brought to the Muppets and to Kermit himself. Now that we've passed the torch to Steve, and then from Steve to Matt has the world in front of him now, kind of being a little bit of a leader like Jim was in a way behind the camera, not just in front of the camera, And so who knows what Kermit is going to see and do next. In fact, Disney Plus has Muppets Now, which is a really fun kind of live improvised Muppets thing. But I didn't really dig too deeply into the history of the Muppets in this episode because I already have. I helped Kevin over in Defunctland make his 6-part Jim Henson miniseries. So go over there and take a look at really the life and times of Jim. And check out Uploading Walt Disney World, my buddy Kenny Johnson, who has in my office that is full of Kermit stuff, or patreon.com/DisneyDan, where I'll have some behind the scenes look at my massive Kermit collection, because I just have so much. This is just a schmecken of my Kermit, of my Kermit paraphernalia. I have Kermit silly bands, all right? Kermit silly bands. Could the episode start with a red curtain with the DIStory Dan logo? It's the DIStory Dan Show. Do 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 do. To show you evolutions is what I'm here to do. So it really makes me happy to evolute for you, Miss Piggy. Yeah! Whew, that was commitment. Evolute's a word. I looked it up. It's a mathematical term, nothing to do with evolution, but I'm sticking with that lyric. From Piggy's inception, she was a diva, 100%, in this beautiful gown, beautiful hair, beautiful eye makeup. But Piggy then was known as Piggy Lee and was first played by Jerry Nelson. Initially introduced as a bit character in a talent recruitment episode of the Herb Alpert Show,
I can't give you anything but love.
Piggy Lee was somewhat of a joke and an homage to the singer Peggy Lee, who Bonnie Erickson, original creator and designer of Miss Piggy, was a big fan of. Unfortunately, Peggy Lee wasn't fond of the Muppets and at one point even threatened to sue. You can tell that she was kind of an ensemble player and whatnot because Piggy would make continued appearances and would be altered occasionally with new eyes, new bodies, new costumes, different hair, different accessories to play different characters depending on what Jim needed for a certain performance. You can see Piggy as Piggy Lee in a segment of Muppet Sex and Violence with a new set of eyes that usually people make when they hear that the Muppets first starred in a special called Muppet Sex and Violence. But it wasn't until the Muppets got their beloved ongoing show that Miss Piggy began to develop her own unique personality. The original construction of Miss Piggy is interesting to take note here because she's a hand-carved foam puppet that's then skinned in Antron fleece. And this is how Miss Piggy and most of the pigs were constructed early on in the Muppet Show. As the character moves and talks, the skin, the fleece of the puppet, can wrinkle and move very strangely, and it's kind of unsettling. Miss Piggy early on is hard to look at in certain scenes. She still has that bright, beautiful personality, but she is kind of like wrinkly and mangy looking, specifically in that first season of The Muppet Show.
Do you prefer Shakespeare to Bacon?
She was played by multiple performers. Richard Hunt, that would play her occasionally. But it wasn't until Frank Oz kind of introduced a little bit of sassy violence and hi-ya-ness to Miss Piggy, specifically after the Kermit the Frog infamous Tattooed Lady performance, that really set the tone as Miss Piggy being Frank's character.
Have you met my left fist?
It was season 2 of The Muppet Show, though, that really, boom, sent Piggy skyrocketing to stardom. And she got a new puppet in the second season that kind of refined the look a little more, with a different snout that made it a little bit more dynamic for Frank, who used to put a lot of emotion in the use of that snout. Her eyes were glammed up, made a little bit bigger. Her hair, her ears went from these kind of flat, curly Doritos into these thick, crispy pork rinds. It was really, really great upgrade to the character. Some jewelry, some different gloves. She really started to glam it up, but as her fame started to skyrocket, so too did her wardrobe. She was a regular character on things like Pigs in Space and the veterinary hospital skits, but she also then started to be used alongside diva galore, doing performances with Elton John or Ethel Merman, really celebrating the character and putting her in all different kinds of truly unique outfits through the run of The Muppet Show. The late 70s were wild for Miss Piggy, all right? She started writing books, making guest show appearances. Miss Piggy exploded as this cultural icon. And what you'll soon see is that Miss Piggy is this fashion diva, right? And everything about her will continue to evolve as fashion itself evolves. She's a parody. She's a comment on the idea of fashion and how we perceive it in the media. And as that glamour lifestyle and our opinion of it continues to evolve, so too does Miss Piggy's. With the introduction of the Muppets' first movie in 1979, The Muppet Movie, Miss Piggy got a true and full makeover.
This year's Miss Bogan County, Miss Piggy!
Previously, as I mentioned, made out of a hand-carved foam construction, Miss Piggy was, for the first time, instead of carved, thrown in latex foam, giving her a picturesque, smooth skin. She was finished in a new, unique way to puppet finishing at the time called flocking. Miss Piggy isn't, of course, the only one to use it. Lots and lots of characters use it. It takes hypercharged fibers using static electricity and shoots them onto a surface that's been prepped with a certain kind of glue. And when you do that in the right way, it turns into this very realistic, almost like peach fuzzy, natural hair look that you have when you have skin covered with very, very fine hair. It's truly remarkable, this kind of finish technique, and it changed the way Piggy would look forever. Now she is a cast foam sculpted head, similar to how this puppet is right here, right now. It's just a flat surface that was then covered with that really fine particulate, giving her that iconic look. And right around then, about halfway through season 3 of The Muppet Show, the foam cast Piggy was introduced into The Muppet Show, and from here on out, Miss Piggy kind of gets her iconic silhouette and style. This is the Piggy that we kind of become familiar with. It was the Muppet movie that really took the main characters like Gonzo, Fozzie, Kermit, Piggy, and refined the puppet into that really polished look that we are now familiar with to this day. Can you smell those candles? They smell like memories. It's the Magic Candle Company. Disney Dan 15% off.
Did you just make up that song on the spot?
Yeah, I did.
Wow. I'm impressed.
My name is Miss Piggy, and I would like to be a high fashion model.
The second Muppet movie really continued to refine the idea of Miss Piggy's look. And again, all of these movies really do. Every time she makes an appearance and the character is kind of played with, her eyes, her hair, her ears, things get tweaked and played with very often. And usually it's to accompany whatever ridiculous outfit she's wearing. And if you remember, Miss Piggy does a lot of stuff in the Muppet Caper. She swims, she rides motorcycles, she jumps through windows. I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I see a real Miss Piggy, i.e. like a 2-scale Piggy costume on a person who, to scale, it's so unsettling. Ooh, those are some petrifying puppets, I'll tell you what. The Miss Piggy stunt puppet wasn't done being used. They just turned it up to 11 in the next movie in 1984's The Muppets Take Manhattan, where Miss Piggy is, of course, iconically mugged in Central Park, and then takes chase after the mugger, where you get this, no one was prepared. I don't know how did parents explain that to children? Like, Mommy, what is that? That's a pig on skates, honey. That's a pig on skates. And if I ever saw a Miss Piggy on skates coming at me at high speed, it would be one of the truly most terrifying things I'd ever encounter in my life. She's just so tiny and so thick and so aggressive. You know what I mean? You gotta watch out for a pig on skates. You've gotta watch out for a pig on skates. Of course, Muppets Take Manhattan is the birthplace of the Muppet Babies, but I'm not going to dig too deep into the Muppet Babies yet. Before that, of course, I have to talk about the first time the Muppets went on tour. 1984, The Muppet Show went on tour across America with The Muppet Show Live. It was incredible, truly. And with that, we got full-bodied costume characters of your favorite tiny Muppets, and none of them really work. Just, if you haven't watched The Evolution of Kermit, the costume isn't really great. All of these characters have articulated heads in that, they're lip syncing along with the track, and it works for most of the characters. Fozzie, Kermit, anyone that have big flappy mouths. But Piggy, by having this giant snout thing on this articulated costumed head, and so the mechanic really struggles to make the mouth kind of work. The Muppet Show on tour lasted for, believe it or not, 3 years. It kept being revived, and each year it came back, much like, Disney on Ice. New numbers were introduced, including Miss Piggy in the second and third tour being referenced as a Madonna-type character, except her name is Muy Donna. Because she's... Never mind. After the Muppet Show on tour ended in 1986, they kept it running. They just changed the age of the characters, where the Muppet Babies, now capitalizing on the ever-popular cartoon show that we saw first featured in Muppets Take Manhattan all the way back. Man, Baby Piggy is super cute, isn't she? And she's super cute when she's animated. She's super cute when she's animated in 3D, like we see her now as the Muppet Baby. But as a live, big, walk-around, terrifying baby, no, I don't need that. I don't need any of that. Here's, though, the thing. With Muppet Babies, they do translate into costume characters better than the Muppets do, in that they're all tiny and fat. You know what I mean? Like, that's the aesthetic. It's like, how do we translate the Muppets into children? Just make them short and fat. And that's what they did. And because of that, they have more realistic proportions that can be translated into these big, dopey, costumes. Because, did you see how long Kermit's fingers were in that last... in that last segment? No, thank you. No, thank you. Leave it to Disney to step in and save the day. Because in 1990, as Jim Henson was negotiating the takeover of the Muppets by the Disney company, they partnered to make a lot of great stuff happen in the parks, including Muppet Vision 3D, which, fun fact, if you watch carefully, during the number where Miss Piggy is by the waterside with Bean Bunny, when Miss Piggy picks up the water ski thing and gets zipped off, you'll notice that because they had to do multiple takes and they couldn't risk the puppet being damaged, the head is rigged to detach. And so when Miss Piggy gets pulled forward by the jet ski, her head flies backwards. You'll never be able to not see it now that I told you. But separate from the Muppet Vision 3D, there was also a live Muppet show in the park called Here Come the Muppets. And they fixed all of the problems with the Piggy articulation. And the character delivers probably some of the best out of all of the characters being made into live, big-bodied costume characters. Here Come the Muppets ran for about a year in the space that we now know as Voyage of the Little Mermaid. And after that closed, after a couple months, they didn't stop performing. They wrote an entirely new show that moved them over outside of the Muppet Vision Theater called Muppets on Location, Swines and Roses, which was this Broadway send-off featuring all kinds of Broadway numbers with Miss Piggy as the star. And you kind of could watch the Muppets shoot on location and film a thing and all those hijinks that ensue. But Miss Piggy is full glam and she looks good. There's this picture of Miss Piggy with Brian Henson and Michael Eisner, arm in arm. My God, look at her. Glamour. The 90s really brought Miss Piggy into the modern era of fashion diva, and she first got that iconic new haircut look that she sported in the 90s with that short kind of bob in a 1989 National Wildlife Preserve PSA, who better to speak for nature than pigs and frogs and stuff, you know? So, I mean, great partnership. And in this, she has this really great short bob and she looks really good. And this is the hairstyle that we kind of see now start to be the common hair look that she has throughout the 90s. Of course, with one minor exception, which was the 1989 Disney Christmas special, which looked like whatever box that she was shipped in to be featured into this thing was sat on by Sweetums, because she is like, she's like not normal. She's a little bit of like a sleep paralysis demon Piggy in this. She's like, this is the Piggy that when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't move and I look at my feet, I see this pig staring back at me. Yikes. Her head shape, though, will continue to hold its unique round apple-like shape. She was very sleek and streamlined as a character, and by the time we see her in Muppets from Space in 1999, she is a true businesswoman pig. The 2000s brought a lot of changes for Miss Piggy, specifically with her voice, with Eric Jacobson replacing Frank Oz, and a lot of direct-to-video Muppet specials were made at the time. Muppets Letters to Santa, and, you know, the Muppet Christmas special with Whoopi Goldberg left and right, including, though, a new movie where the Muppets take on the Wizard of Oz. We see a lot of fun stuff being done with Miss Piggy as she plays all of the witches, including the first time we see Miss Piggy in with black hair. We've never seen this before. And she started doing the red carpet as a brunette, which I thought was really cool. Although it's weird. It's like, you know, growing up with a best friend that's got glasses and he wears glasses all the time. And then he like sneezes for the first time ever, like 5 years into your friendship, and his glasses fall off and you see him without glasses on. And you're like, dude, what's wrong with your face? And you realize, oh God, he's not wearing glasses. It's like that, but with hair on a pig. Into the 2010s, the Muppets come back, of course, with the Muppet movie and Muppets Most Wanted, and they lead the charge on a volunteering campaign for Walt Disney World that would get you a day in the park for volunteering your efforts to help mankind. And in the parks to celebrate this event, they had a special parade that featured a oversized Piggy and an oversized Kermit puppet that could read very well from parades, because if they were the regular size, they'd look a little bit too small. Of course, Miss Piggy will always continue to find new looks, new styles, new great ways to show off how much of a diva she is. But we got to look a little bit into the future in Muppets Most Wanted to get a peek at how Piggy and Kermit are gonna play out when they're older. And I think what's interesting about this is that she goes from one signature pearl necklace, which has all along been used to hide the neck seam, and now she's got 3 pearl necklaces. Kermit has really run out of ideas for Christmas. He just keeps buying this pig pearls at varying lengths. Miss Piggy throughout the years has had hundreds, maybe thousands of looks. But specifically, how her puppet's been used throughout the years by puppeteers, not just how she's been built, really influences the way that she looks on camera. A puppeteer like Frank Oz, who could be doing a lot of nose work that brings the nose down, giving the pig a lot of aggression, compared to a Eric Jacobson Piggy that's very proper and diva-like and has a lot of high nose work. And that kind of variance in performance truly influence how her face is being perceived. Now that the Muppet Show, the original Muppet Show, all 5 seasons are on Disney+, you all need to be going there right now to be watching that vintage pig in action and finding her footing as the diva that you now know and love. Not sponsored, but Disney+, please call me, I've got some ideas. Let me know which Miss Piggy throughout the years you've attached to. What appearance in a movie, what stunt or vicious act of violence against amphibians has really stood out in your mind as a titular moment for this iconic diva pig.
Yeah. She's a feminist icon.
Is she? Ladies and gentlemen, it is Dan the Great, here to present to you the evolution of Gonzo! And then maybe there's just a bunch of explosions.
Whoa.
I've spent most of my life wondering what is a Gonzo. And sure, you have Kermit, he's a frog. Fozzie bears a pig. No, that's not. That was my ADD in pure form there, folks. I was thinking about what I was going to say next. I was already on to Miss Piggy. In movies, you see Kermit shipped as a frog, you see Fozzie shipped labeled as a bear, and you see Gonzo shipped labeled as a whatever. There's just been this large looming mystery about what a Gonzo is. And I think by looking into his evolution, we might be able to figure it out. Gonzo's first introduction to the Muppet universe was as the cigar box Fraggle in the 1970 Muppet special, The Great Santa Claus Switch. This special is wild. It's essentially Nightmare Before Christmas, just done by the Muppets a couple decades earlier. There's this scheming guy, Cosmo Sam, who has a smoking problem, and he doesn't like Santa Claus, and he wants to take over the business, and he has a whole army of weird, like beaked, feathery creatures known as the Frackles. There's a specific scene in the special, though, where Cosmo Sam is particularly stressed, and he needs a cigar. And he's like, "Where's my cigar box?" And he opens up the box, and out pops this blue little guy.
Give me a cigar, will you?
Here it is, boys.
He just lived his life in a cigar box. And like, with some Mary Poppins magic, I mean, that's a shallow box, and that's a large monster. How did he get in there? As we rolled into the Muppet Show, Jim Henson was just handing out puppets to his horde of puppeteers. And in that cast was a newcomer named Dave Goelz. And so, from the pile of Muppets that weren't being used, hands over to Dave this character that would be lovingly deemed Gonzo. And for the most part, in the first season of the Muppet Show, he's just a background character. He's just one of the gang. He's doing wacky stuff, but he's not really a lead player.
Here, let me take this opportunity to present the Muppet Show's resident artist, Gonzo the Great!
Thank you very much. Thank you.
He's a frumpy looking dude. He's beat up looking. He's this timid, insecure newcomer, and that really represented Dave's journey as a puppeteer throughout his entire career.
Yokos! What do they know about art?
By the time Muppet Season 2 rolled out, Gonzo was a superstar. 1977 saw Gonzo's true rise to fame. He wasn't just a background player anymore. Now he was a front-facing lead Muppet, and everyone loved him and his silly, silly antics. And with that new love of Gonzo, we had to rebuild the Muppet entirely to give him all kinds of new skills and abilities. Most notably, the biggest change from Gonzo Season 1 to Gonzo Season 2 was his eyelids. Now he had fully functional eyes that allowed him to emote a great deal more than he ever was before. So now Gonzo can be weird, mischievous, and that doesn't have to be permanently locked into a sad, timid archetype. Now he can be excited, he can have fun, he can really explore his true weirdness. It's Season 2 of The Muppet Show where things really got off the rails for Gonzo. Right off the bat is... in Season 2 is where he discovered his love of chickens. In episode 204, there's this iconic scene where Gonzo's auditioning chickens, and there's this moment where he's like,
Okay, don't call us, we'll call you. Nice legs, though.
And that was just a tasteful, well, perhaps a not untasteful ad-lib by Dave Goelz, but it really set the tone of Gonzo's love of chickens. And it just grew from there. He's had many chicken companions, from Camilla to Louise. There have been many chickens. I would like the record to show that my producer Kenny's argument for Gonzo's love of chickens is that they just have there's a high turnover rate of chicken lifespans. So there's just always a new it's like James Bond a little bit. When one dies, a new one takes its mantle. You know what I mean? The nose could also be described as perhaps a beak, and he has feathers. He's feathery. And so it only would make sense, perhaps, that this weird, undescribed creature might take an interest in poultry. The Muppet movie, as we've said time and time again with Kermit's evolution and Miss Piggy's evolution, is where we really saw the solidification of a lot of the Muppets' personalities, looks, and designs. And Gonzo is no different. This is an interesting time to mention Gonzo's nose in particular, because Gonzo's nose is different than most other Muppet builds. Most Muppets are covered with fur, they're monsters, or other puppets are covered with a fleece, like Kermit. But Gonzo is unique in that he has a matted fur build, but with an exposed foam nose. The foam that you see that's making up his nose and mouth is the foam that's used to construct most of the puppets. But in this case, we left it exposed, and they lightly color it. Sometimes it's a light misting of blue. Sometimes they go really deep and make it a strong, deep purple or blue. But regardless, it's always an exposed foam, which gives Gonzo a truly unique texture that makes him stand out from the other Muppets. I would be remiss if I didn't dive for just a moment into Gonzo's antics. He's a daredevil, man. He's the Steve-O of the Muppets. There's not a thing that you can't dare Gonzo to do that he won't look you in the eye and will say, double that down. I'll do it on top of flaming tire, bro. Anything you could do, I can do better and crazier. Gonzo's that guy, and his wardrobe reflects that in spades. Man, Gonzo goes from Argyle sweater vests to chili pepper vests to velvet tuxedos to who's that guy that jumped over canyons and stuff? Evel Knievel. He even goes full Evel Knievel sometimes with his outfits. And that's really what enamors a lot of us to Gonzo, is the fact that he is this indestructible, immortal, blue thing that just is so true to himself and true to what he wants to do. He really just follows his voice and his heart. That makes him a very versatile character for the Muppet writers, because we have dressed Gonzo up and stuck him into the strangest of places. Now it's a good time for me to remind you that the Magic Candle Company has really great theme park scented candles. And when you buy them and use Disney Dan 15 for 15% off your order, it helps the channel. You guys are awesome. You buy so many candles and it really, really helps support us here. Thank you so much. Muppet Christmas Carol was a big moment for the Muppets in general, right? This was the first movie that Jim wasn't a part of, right? We had a new Kermit. What are the Muppets gonna do? Where are the Muppets gonna go? And truly, an interesting response to that was to give Gonzo the leading role. It was very unexpected to give Gonzo this front-facing narrator space, this Charles Dickens-esque, omniscient person who broke the fourth wall quite regularly in true Gonzo fashion.
And, Tiny Tim?
Tiny Tim, who did not die.
Oh, isn't that swell?
It really cemented my true love of Gonzo, permanently, is this movie. This movie is amazing. What's interesting is that the performer Dave Goelz says, and is on record saying, that this Gonzo is his favorite version of Gonzo that he's ever performed. And it's interesting to reflect on Dave Goelz, the performer's journey with Gonzo, since he started off as the Muppets, putting Gonzo on for the first time as a bit of an outsider. Here in Christmas Carol, we're seeing Gonzo really evolve with the heart of Dave Goelz. Dave Goelz had just gotten married. He was becoming a father. He was becoming gentler, more rounded, warm human. And Jerry Joel really punched a lot of that into the character of Gonzo when he was writing the script. Gonzo is just amazing. And I already have a personal connection with Christmas Carol because I've performed it time and time again as Ghost of Christmas Present. And Muppets Christmas Carol is truly one of the best adaptions of Christmas Carol, period. You can put me on record saying that. I love Muppets Christmas Carol. It's fantastic. And part of the reason is because of Gonzo. He has iconic moments in there. When the doors fly open when the first ghost comes.
What are we doing?
Nothing. What? Well, just hold on.
What?
This Gonzo is peak Gonzo. It's really the pinnacle of the Gonzo look. You can see the coloring of his nose is where we really land and stick for the rest of time. This blue tinted nose with the bright red lips and mouth. That contrast, that color palette is what Gonzo has to this day. They even tweak his eyelids a little bit. You can see, if you look really closely, his eyelids overlap each other in a kind of McDonald's golden arches kind of way. Instead of being their two independent eyelids, everything's kind of been tightened up and refined and focused with this Gonzo, and it becomes the iconic Gonzo, even more so than the 78 Muppet movie Gonzo. It's in the timeline of Gonzo that we now approach his movie, his Muppet movie, Muppets from Space. Now, there's a lot of controversy with Muppets from Space. We're finding out Gonzo's origin story, and maybe that wasn't necessary, because it really pinholes Gonzo's weirdness and demystifies him in a way that doesn't serve his character any justice. All right, the movie's like, sure, he's an alien. I guess. But you know, his original origins were to just be an outsider, to be unique, to be truly unique. And you know, Dave Goelz has been on record saying that the Muppets from Space isn't Gonzo canon. It's not his choice. It wasn't something he necessarily believes in. And you know, I can't help but I mean, it's a fun movie. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun Muppet movie. I don't dislike it, but I don't know if we need it yet. I don't know if we needed Gonzo to be an alien. So in my quest to find out what a Gonzo is, I can't really trust Muppets from Space because Gonzo's dad says it's not true, you know? And if you can't take Gonzo's dad at face value, who can you trust? This is, you know what we did? We George Lucas'd Gonzo is what we did. George passed on the rights to his beloved space adjacent franchise, and then corporate America just ruined it. You know what I mean? We just smashed it down. We're just like, what's that? Gonzo's from space, and we're gonna ruin your childhoods. Just steamrolling over everything. Let me now dive into one of my favorite Gonzos of all time. 2005's Muppets Wizard of Oz. Sure, this movie isn't a big favorite of Muppet fans, but I love it. The looks, the designs, the character choices for the Muppets specifically were fantastic. Cowardly Lion Fozzie, Scarecrow Kermit, Tin Man Gonzo, aka Tinzo. Look at this. This is one of the most stunning designs I've ever seen. Man, they really nailed it with this Gonzo. His nose is a cell phone, very important note. Tinzo, Tin Thing, and to bring it full circle, he's got nipples.
What do these do?
Nothing, they're my nipples.
Gonzo has little nipple dials. Gonzo and Batista, they've got sensitive, silvery nipples.
Oh, my nipples!
But that leads us into the modern Gonzo. Modern Gonzo from 2009 on, when Disney sort of started up the campaign to ramp up the new Muppet movies they were making with Jason Segel and such, they kind of gave all the Muppets a little facelift and tweak, and you know, the nose is a bit thicker, his features are a bit bolder, his pupils get a little bit, everything's a little bit more defined. That goes across the board with a lot of the Muppets. We saw it in Piggy, we saw it even in Kermit, how they were playing around with the eye focus and the design and the minor shapes. And here, you know, Gonzo's rounded out. The new Muppet design played a little bit with the color. They lightly dusted his nose a little bit differently, playing with the light and how the color shows through. His eyelids go back to his original color palette. It's just a simpler, more refined vintage Gonzo. And interestingly enough, in 2008, introduced a specific mech that allowed Gonzo to fully Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He can move one eyelid, right? Doesn't The Rock do that, Kenny? Kenny knows wrestling, Kenny. The people's eyebrow. That is, so Gonzo, I forgot about the people's eyebrow. Gonzo's got the Gonzo eyebrow. I know I skipped over it because we just glazed right past Muppets Take Manhattan, but here is the Baby Gonzo segment of this video. Buckle in. Muppet Babies are wild to me because they started as these live action characters that got translated into a cartoon, and then later that cartoon got rebooted into a computer animated CGI cartoon that then later got translated into physical puppets again. These Muppet Babies have gone through some stuff, man. They have really transformed and really seen a lot. The original Gonzo is adorable and leans into his chicken love, of course, his bird love. He's in those red overalls with the bird on it. He's just so gosh darn cute.
Conduct neurosurgery on your brain.
Listen to me. If Gonzo wearing a dress causes you to lose any sleep, well, honestly, I have no advice for you because that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Why were people upset with Gonzo wearing a dress? Everyone just needs to sit down for a minute and just take a breath. Maybe we'll make some soup or something. Everyone just calm down. We're gonna look around each other and be like, hey, how is everybody? I know we're not talking about Gonzo in a dress for a minute. We're just taking a time out on that. How are you? Are you doing okay? Because I'm worried about you. Because we've been fighting about Gonzo wearing a dress in a cartoon. Come on, folks. Gonzo truly is an amazing character to throw in a dress and have that journey, because Gonzo's always been true to himself. He's always listened to who he was. And it doesn't matter if he was not like anyone else, if he felt different and he did different things. He was him. He was Gonzo. He was unapologetically Gonzo. That's the right kind of message that we need to send to kids these days who are looking around in a very confusing society and just want to and they just want to be them, and they're constantly being bombarded with "don't be you." And here's a character who's just like, yeah, guys, I wanted to put on a dress because dresses are fun. What's the problem? Gonzo's amazing. And Tom Warburton amazingly has a quote about this controversy. Gonzo is always 200% Gonzo 340% of the time. And you know what? If you want to be you, be you. That's amazing. I love that message. Gonzo's a hero, all right?
I don't want you to be upset with me, but I don't want to do things just because that's the way they've always been done either. I want to be me.
Of course, it wouldn't be a Disney Dan video if we weren't some walk-around costume characters, so let's get into that. 1984's Muppets on Tour live show. We get, all those articulated, moving head Muppets that really just reframed the entire game of costume walk-around characters. And that, of course, rolled into the 1986 Muppet Babies live tour, where we get Baby Gonzo, who is even more adorable as a live walk-around character. I just want to squish him. That's one of he's so gosh darn cute. And then we see the Muppets start to appear in Disney World. Here come the Muppets. Gonzo's there, man, in his paisley sweater vest and shirt and bow tie, and he's Gonzoing it up. He's Gonzo. It really stays very true to the design of these Muppets when they blow them up into walk-around characters. I mean, other than Kermit's long, aggressive fingers that make me uncomfortable, the Gonzo character truly translates beautifully because he doesn't have any weird proportions, because he is weird, so you can throw him into a human bodysuit and you're just like, yeah, that works. It's really important for me to mention, maybe truly is only Dave Goelz who can tell us what Gonzo is, because Dave Goelz is Gonzo in a way. Dave Goelz is the last puppeteer from the Muppets group, and that says something for that character. The Muppets have essentially become a cover band in a big bad way. They're not the original guys, they're doing an imitation of some legendary performers' performances, and then doing new original stuff with that. But that doesn't apply with Gonzo. Gonzo is still Gonzo. And so whatever Gonzo is, I'm gonna listen to Dave. And if Dave says that Gonzo's a whatnot, or a whatever, or a something, then that's what he is. He's a something, he's a weird something, and we can't necessarily put a pin on what Gonzo is, because Gonzo's unique, and that's what makes Gonzo, Gonzo.
All 999, but there's always room for one more.
Whoa, just came off of watching that new Muppets Haunted Mansion special, and spoilers, there's an old creepy Gonzo puppet in it. Whoa, what an old creepy Gonzo. I was not prepared. I was not prepared at all for old Gonzo. Old, bald, wrinkled-nosed, bony finger Gonzo. I didn't even know Gonzo's had bones. Man, I loved it though. What a fun special. Gonzo's the new Kermit, guys. Everyone has a Gonzo moment they love. Everybody. Maybe it's that scene in Muppets Treasure Island where his arms and legs get stretched out really, really far. Maybe it's a moment in Christmas Carol, or a stunt from the original Muppet Show. There's just endless moments of heartwarming absurdity that is Gonzo, and I'm sure you all have a favorite Gonzo moment. Hey, welcome! Welcome to another episode of Disney Dan's Costume Evolutions. This thing on? Hey, welcome. Hey, did I ever tell you about the man who put a light bulb in his nose? He was lightheaded. Waka waka. Hey. Oh, did I tell you about the guy who put a sweater on his dog? He had a chili dog. Whoa, waka waka. Brian Henson once remarked that Fozzie Bear is always telling terrible jokes, but he's trying so hard that you've just gotta love him. And you know what? Isn't that why you're here? Isn't that why you love me? I'm like theme park Fozzie Bear. And as you know, Kenny and I are on a quest to cover every Muppet here on the DIStory Dan channel. We've done Kermit, we've done Piggy, we've done Gonzo, and so now it's time for the fan-requested Fozzie Bear. That's right, let's get into it. This is gonna be unbearable. If you could just bear with me, I'll see how soon we can get our bearings. All right, this is going too long. Okay, let's get to it. Frank Oz was just a teenager when he joined Jim Henson's troupe of puppeteers. Jim was wildly impressed with his puppeteering talents and was quick to scoop him up and put him to work across many of his early projects. When it came time for Sesame Street to begin shooting, Oz had a bunch of roles under his belt, including Bert, Grover, and Cookie Monster, proving how extremely talented he was. So when the Muppets finally got their own show, it was imperative that Jim give Frank an opportunity to stretch his wings and show off his puppeteering and comedy chops. In total, Frank Oz ended up with at least 6 iconic Muppets sharing his arm, like Miss Piggy or Animal. But one of the new characters proved to be the trickiest of all to figure out: the bear, Fozzie. Who would this new bear be?
Muppet players on stage, please. Muppet players on stage.
Am I a Muppet player?
No, you're a Radio City Rockette. Of course you're a Muppet player!
The earliest version of Fozzie actually comes from the first 2 pilot episodes of The Muppet Show, filmed in 1976. The pilot episodes featured a sketch called Cowboy Time, which was a Western sketch that starred a character named Kid Fozzie. And now, while this looks like Fozzie, this is a pretty strong departure from where they would end up with Fozzie's character. It's a very deep, very cowboy-y voice.
Oh, you shouldn't have done that. I'm a desperate bear, ready for desperate measures.
But Fozzie is instantly recognizable in this form. His head is a triangular shape and is what is known as a pinhead puppet that has a very wide mouth across the base and goes up to a very pointy head. Fozzie Bear operates a lot like Cookie Monster in a lot of ways. You have a very sculpted, formed head and chest, and then otherwise you have a very large amount of fabric underneath it that matches the fabric of the character. It's all brown, shaggy fabric with long-armed gloves, so 2 puppeteers can fit inside of this character. So you have Frank Oz puppeteering Fozzie's mouth while also, gesturing with the hands, and then he has a second puppeteer next to him operating the other hand. They loved putting mechanics in the head of Fozzie, and here we see the first one. In his cheeks, he has a balloon mechanism that allows him to smile or frown. Fozzie's face just changed shape. It's so wild, isn't it? Okay, now to explain away Kid Fozzie. After filming the first 2 episodes of The Muppets with hosts Juliet Prowse and Connie Stevens, Jim and the team got feedback from the studio that some of the characters and jokes were just not clicking. The show wasn't working. Plus, Frank Oz really hadn't fully fleshed out the voice and persona of Fozzie, so that's why he has this odd, low voice. He was still workshopping the character. I don't know, maybe Fozzie sounds a little dull here. I don't like the voice. But to correct the initial criticism of the show, Jim and the crew went back, reshot, retooled, and edited down some scenes and bits, and that is when Frank finally found Fozzie's voice. So, to use the sketch right before the scene happens in the show, Fozzie's backstage prepping, and he says to Kermit,
"Hey, does this sound like John Wayne?"
Thus establishing why Fozzie has chosen to use such an odd specific voice. The hat is different though. Like you can tell so clearly this is a pickup because the hat Fozzie is wearing when he's like, "Do you like my John?" And he goes out onto the set and he's dressed differently. One of my favorite Fozzie tidbits is the earliest argument about Fozzie is, where did he get his name? And I like a lot of people are like, oh, it's obvious, Frank Oz, F.Oz, Fozzie, right? That's one of the big theories, but really, if you look a little bit deeper, you find out that Fozzie was constructed by none other than a man named Fozzie, which is a very specific name, and thanks to the gift of old men on Twitter, Frank Oz was able to actually confirm that, in fact, Fozzie is named Fozzie because of Fozzie. Like one of the 3 only good things to come out of old white guys on Twitter. Waka waka.
Prices are so high. Yesterday I bought a pound of hamburger and had to have a cosigner.
Outside of the original Kid Fozzie puppet, the rest of Fozzie Bear Season 1 Muppet Show had a very specific mechanic that allowed him to wiggle his ears. Fozzie has this big, tall head, so it allows for lots of mechanisms to be shoved in there. We saw the balloon mechanism, now he has an ear wiggle mechanism. And these ear wiggles change from year to year. They wiggle fast sometimes, they wiggle slow sometimes. It's a very dynamic tool that gives Fozzie all this emotion. After the Kid Fozzie bit, we really didn't see the balloon mechanism. That just went away. Season 1 Fozzie is like more embarrassing than he is charming with all of his bad comedy and audience kind of reactions. It took Jerry Jewell and Frank Oz literally the entire first season to figure out that they needed to inject Fozzie Bear with unrelenting optimism in the face of all of his obstacles. And that joy that Fozzie has when he's backstage, despite how bad of a comedian he is, makes him so much more relatable. We ourselves are faced with so many failures, and yet we pick ourselves back up.
Okay, any other impressions, huh?
Yeah, we'd like to see an impression of a bear leaving a stage.
And Statler and Waldorf are interesting, and they give Fozzie, man, the hardest time ever. They were the original tea servers. They were the original shade throwers. They were the original Karens. These Statler and Waldorfs. Oh my God. Could you imagine like sitting across from them in a diner or something? Intolerable, these two men. Intolerable. Season 2 Fozzie Bear is brighter. He's lighter. He's more effervescent. And literally, he is now a shade brighter. He's orange now. He's not this like dark brown. He's like this bright orange. He has a thinner head now, and he loses those pronounced cheeks because we took that balloon mechanism out of the puppet, and so now everything's a little bit slimmer. And because we've changed his fur to a light orange instead of a dark brown, boy, does he have eyebrows now. I mean, my brother has 2 caterpillars crawling across his face. Those are some brows, bro. Plus, in the endless pursuit to make this bear as complicated as possible, we added a new mechanism in the second season that allowed his eyebrows to move that we barely used because he's always wearing his hat, and his eyebrows moving is essentially useless. You can't really tell when he's wearing his hat. So there's like one scene in episode 6 where he's not wearing a hat, and we're like, oh, now's the moment. Wiggle his eyebrows. And they did. And everyone's like, oh, I missed it, because it doesn't really look like anything. So for the first 7 episodes, Fozzie had an eyebrow mechanism that was quickly dispatched and removed. About midway through season 3 of The Muppet Show, we got a new Fozzie, specifically in the Harry Belafonte episode, episode 14. Here, Fozzie gets modified. His jaw gets modified and it's much bigger. His head becomes rounder. He's got like this like round basketball head. He's like basketball Foz. I don't know. You can really see it in the Danny Kaye episode, episode 16. Like, it's just so round. It's interesting, isn't it? And this lasted through season 3.
Waka 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 waka. Hey, you're a great crowd. Thank you, and thank you. Hey, waka waka.
But who cares how round Fozzie's head is? The Muppet movie is here, thus means high quality, silver screen ready, close up Mr. DeVille, fancy puppets are on their way. I love when the Muppets translate to film because it means we get fancy Muppet puppets. They really refine the characters so they look good on the big screen. And Fozzie is a great example of that. Specifically, of all things, his eyebrows. Those out-of-control caterpillars that we've had on his face the entire Muppet Show now finally are refined. He gets a bit of an eyebrow wax, and they're much thinner, they're much smoother. Also, because of film stock, I don't know what the deal is, but apparently they made his fur even oranger than it was on the Muppet Show to deal with the saturation of how film was shot. But I don't know film, you know? I'm not Wes Anderson, you know? What I'm filming isn't sweet, sweet candy of saturation, you know? Kenny, bump up the saturation, bro, and also play that soundbite, bump it up. Kenny, when you're editing this, just Google, ooh, bump it up, and I'm sure something will pop up. One of my favorite things about the original Muppet movie is Fozzie and his Studebaker. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the Studebaker Museum recently unearthed the original Fozzie Muppet movie Studebaker. And they reached out to my buddy and Figment puppet constructor, Adam Kruttinger, to build a replica Fozzie. In fact, he's gonna send me like a makeshift Fozzie head, which will make its way into this video in some way, shape, or form. But he's building a Fozzie to put into the fully restored original Muppet movie Studebaker for the Studebaker Museum. I think that's so cool. And something else cool about Adam, he just wrote a book about how to build puppets. It's amazing. So, quick shout out to Adam and his Puppetry 101 book. I'll put a link to it in the description. I know you guys always are messaging me about how to build puppets, and Adam literally wrote a book about it. It's that time again. My favorite part of every Muppet evolution. It's Muppet Babies time! That's right, 1984's Muppet Takes Manhattan brings you the Muppet Babies. And more specifically, Baby Fozzie. Look at that cute little pinwheel hat. His little bow tie is so little. He's got a little yellow shirt. You just want to squeeze him. Here's something crazy. I was always under the assumption these are sweet Muppet babies. They're the sweetest little babies. I always thought the puppets were itty bitty. No. They're the same size as the regular puppets! They're huge! They're mutant-sized Muppet babies! Look at these behind-the-scenes pictures! Holy Christ! Sweet baby Broadway Jesus! Also, the same year, 1984, everyone knows it, everyone loves it, it's the Muppet Show on tour. These abominations roamed around America for 2 years. That's right, they remounted it. There was the Muppet Show on tour, the second edition. And, well, some of them are fine, and Kermit's fingers are extra long, and that creeps me the holy heck out. What do they do to my poor boy Fozzie? Look at his face. There's too much space between his nose and lips. He's got like Bart Simpson lips, you know? He's like, no way, man, waka waka. Like, what is going on with this Fozzie? It's wild. It looks like he's depressurizing like Arnold Schwarzenegger did on the surface of Mars in Total Recall. Like gravity hasn't been kind to him. Maybe he was just stung by a bee. That's also something that could have happened that I need to give Fozzie more space for. Maybe Fozzie's allergic to, you know, jam or something. He ate a PB&J, I don't know. But there's something not right with his face. There's plenty okay with the rest of the faces. Look at Statler and Waldorf. They look so perfectly acceptable. For the second batch of Muppet movies, which occurred around 1984 to 1988, a new Fozzie was constructed that had a significantly altered head shape. We are now back to the cone, back to that pinhead design. Fozzie's got a very distinct triangle head. We removed all of that roundness. And in fact, one of the best places to see it is in Muppet Family Christmas, my favorite Fozzie Muppet special. When he's singing next to the snowman, it's like round snowman head, triangle Fozzie head. It's pretty distinct. Also, a quick note on A Muppet Family Christmas. It's got everyone. It's got everything, including Fozzie's mom. Now, Fozzie's mom is essentially just Fozzie Bear wearing drag, in the same way that Minnie Mouse is essentially Mickey Mouse with eyelashes and lipstick. You know, like, it's you know, tomato. These are two of the same thing. And we even got to meet Fozzie's mom all the way back in like season 4 of The Muppet Show, episode 10, I think, and she looked cute there, but here is where she's at her best. And here's where the Muppet lore gets wild, yo. Things start popping off in the Muppet lore, because it turns out Statler and Waldorf are Ma Foz. They're good friends. They come over for Christmas every year. This adds layers of trauma onto the existence of Fozzie that, like, I need to stop making this video and go to therapy right now. This poor bear has been traumatized by these hecklers his entire life, and it turns out his mom sent them there. His mom bought the tickets. There's another Fozzie that's constructed in the late 80s that's used for even more appearances and, you know, random spots like TV shows and stuff that goes back to the rounder Fozzie head. We're really jumping back and forth. But this is the Fozzie that we see at Jim Henson's memorial, which is an absolute tearjerker. Yeah, it really gets me every time, Kenny. All right, let's go to the next segment.
I will show you how to tell jokes. Just watch me a few times, and pretty soon, everyone will say,
Hey, you're as funny as Fozzie Bear.
Waka waka.
Perhaps my favorite bit of Fozzie lore, my most obscure Fozzie lore, is the 1988 direct-to-VHS videotape, Hey, You're as Funny as Fozzie Bear, which was a play-along interactive media series to teach kids how to be funny that allowed you to workshop jokes and learn jokes with Fozzie Bear. Wow. I mean, this is a substitute teacher video if I've ever seen one. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe it's like I'll do it on my Patreon. I'll just sit through the whole thing and see if I come out the other side funny. He does teach you like proper joke structure and like setup and punchline. It is informative. You can tell that like the funny people behind the Muppets wrote it, but Fozzie is not funny. You know what I mean? It's like buying a pillow from the My Pillow guy. It's like, you're asking for disappointment. 1986, Muppet Babies Live. Remember that Nightmare Fest Fozzie that I showed you with the Muppets Live on tour? Well, here's your eye bleach, baby, because it's Baby Fozzie on stage live as a walk-around character. My God, he's so cuddly. He's mutantly large. He's mutantly large, like uncomfortably large. All of these Muppet babies are uncomfortably large. But what a cutie. Just want to give him a squeeze, you know? And also, Your Honor, if I may object for a moment, we had a critically acclaimed, incredibly successful Muppet Babies reboot, and you didn't once think to light the fart that was another live Muppet Babies tour. What, Bluey and Blippy and I don't know, the Wiggles, they can go on tour, but not the Muppet Babies? You put the freaking giant head Spider-Man on tour, but you didn't put the Muppet Babies on tour. Alice Bake Show? Where are your priorities? Give me Muppet Babies Live again. Look how cute these are. 1990. The 90s, baby. We're finally there. And the Muppets are on their way to Walt Disney World. Hey, remember all those terrible things I said about the Muppets on tour? Fozzie Bear costume back in the 80s? Well, I take all that back because new sins have been committed. This thing is a monstrosity. Not only is it dopey and has gigantic lips, but now it looks like it's half asleep and is suffering from an attention deficit disorder. Like it's just, Fozzie is just, his eyes are wandering, his bow is so large. It's beyond comically large. It's unnecessarily large. It's like large enough Adam and Eve could have used it to cover their bits. Look at this fine scarf that this dashing bear gentleman is wearing. No, look at this thing. What on earth? Was it zapped by Wayne Zielinski's shrink ray? Honey, I blew up Fozzie's necktie? My favorite Muppet movie, Muppet Christmas Carol in 1992, has Fozzie Bear playing Fozziewig. And he's entering his wig era. This is Fozzie's wig era. He's so dashing. You got young Fozziewig, you got old Fozziewig. He's so darn cute. What I like about young Fozziewig to old Fozziewig is that they mute his fur down. They make him look older and like aged and ragged versus like the regular orange Fozzie you're used to seeing. And I like that. I like that little bit of storytelling with just the color of the fur they use. Ooh, it's time, my friends, for a bit of petrifying puppets. Kenny apparently has childhood trauma from any time a Muppet is shown standing up on screen. You know what? I get it. And I know why. It's because of Terror Piggy on roller skates, like when she's in the park. Oh my gosh, the thickness of her legs was unsettling. I also agree. Freestanding Muppets, hard pass, sir. Who is operating that puppet? Someone tell me. How was that demon thing given life? We continue with Fozzie's wig era in 1995 with Muppets Treasure Island. He, of course, plays Squire Trelawney, who, of course, has a man who lives on his finger named Mr. Bimbo, who, of course, also has been to the moon twice. I love this Fozzie. It's iconic Fozzie. One of the best Fozzies. Really highlights the pin cone-shaped head sculpt. Like, you can clear as day see how triangular Fozzie's head is when it's wrapped with a Victorian wig. Fozzie's reconstructed once again in the late 90s for another series of Muppet films such as Muppets from Space and the TV show Muppets Tonight. I like this Fozzie, he's cute. He's he looks more like classic Muppet movie Fozzie. It's just very back to roots. 2002, One of my favorite Muppet Christmas movies, a very Muppet Christmas movie, has Fozzie served two ways. First, a Moulin Rouge Fozzie Bear that's got a whole Harold Ziedler energy, which I of course love. But then, my favorite alternate reality Fozzie ever is Grinch Fozzie. Oh my God, this is hilarious. I love Grinch Fozzie. He looks amazing. I wish that I could meet him at Christmas time every year in the parks. It seems like just a home run, and I'm like appalled that we're not doing it. This, of course, is the time in which Frank Oz is just like, peace, y'all. Disney was tired of working with them, and Frankie don't do direct-to-DVD specials. And so Frank was out, and Eric Jacobson was in. At this point, Eric Jacobson had been playing a couple of Frank Oz's characters on Sesame Street since like 1999. Eric had been Bert and Grover, and there was no drama or controversy really with how they sounded. More so who was playing Fozzie was the controversy, but not the voice, like we have right now with the discussion about Matt Vogel with Kermit, and people really having a hard time adjusting to his new voice. Not something you had to deal with here, because Eric Jacobson really slid right into that Frank Oz vocal track and nailed it. You can follow the Yellow Brick Road all the way to 2005's The Muppet Wizard of Oz. I love this movie. A lot of people hate it, but I love it. I love when the Muppets do adaptations of things. It makes me so happy. And Muppet Wizard of Oz is one of them. And I love Cowardly Lion Fozzie Bear. Back to his wig era, of course. I love a lion Fozzie. Oh, and hey, fun fact, your first peek at Lion Fozzie actually came from that direct-to-VHS, You're As Funny as Fozzie Bear.
Fozzie Bear here with the #1 rule of comedy. Never tell jokes while ice skating. You want to know why? Because you don't want to be out there if the ice cracks up. Wait, I got another one. Speaking of ice, what do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire? Frostbite!
Okay, here's where I get uncomfortable with what we've done to my boy Fozzie. ABC's The Muppets reboot turns Fozzie into this weird, fluffy thing. His eyes are shrunken down, his eyebrows are like speckled with like gray, and then his fur is like plush fur. I really don't like it. It's too clean and bright for a bad comedian. Now, most recently in 2022, we have the Muppets Haunted Mansion special, which of course featured Gozzie the Hatbox Bear.
Boo! Boo! Wait, I haven't told my best joke. What happens if you don't pay your exorcism bill? You get repossessed. Shaka waka!
Man, I love seeing the spooky Hatbox ghost holding a rubber chicken. I think that's hilarious. That's so funny to me. And I like spooky Fozzie with teeth. I mean, you want to make Fozzie spooky, give him teeth, man. Fozzie Bear with teeth is unsettling. It's like E.T., like when he screams in the cornfield and he has just dentures, and it's just stuff that'll make you lose sleep at night, all right? You're gonna see those bear teeth in your dreams. It's the Muppet Evolution, featuring Animal Dan. Animal, animal, animal. Animal! It's time to light the music. It's time to hit that like. It's time to get things started on my Muppet Animal costume evolution on DIStory Dan tonight. Boom. Oh boy, it's Animal Dan. I've always loved Animal. He's sort of like the distant rock god cousin to Cookie Monster.
That my kind of fella.
That sort of chaotic, monosyllabic caveman character with one singular pure intention, drumming. Inspired in part by the unhinged drumming antics of classic rock bands like The Who's Keith Moon, the character would have violent musical outbursts that resulted in destructive comedic gold. Animal's first performer, Frank Oz, once explained the essence of Animal in 5 words: sex, sleep, drums, food, and pain. And honestly, I think that sums up this character perfectly. And actually, 2 of those 5 things are practically interchangeable for Animal, who was always trying to eat his drums. This dude eats everything. chaos. We first meet Animal caged in the basement of the Muppets Sex and Violence special in 1975. Animal is a great little character born out of the rather chaotic energy of this special, meant to establish puppets with adult-oriented humor in a family-friendly entertainment environment, parodying the attitude the 70s had at the time for sex and violence on television. It's really great. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend it. We don't really get a good look at him, but he's there chained up in the sewer entrance.
Hi there, Animal.
Which explains the chains on the character right from the get-go. The first time we ever meet Animal, he's chained up like a monster in the basement, you know, like an Addams Family gag. The band plays at the end of the special, so you do get a little bit of a glimpse of him up there playing the drums on stage with Dr. Teeth, chained to his drums, but otherwise he's just a background gag in this otherwise first Muppet special. Animal becomes a solid established member of the company with The Muppet Show in 1976, where we get a solid up-close look at him, like literally right in the opening. The opening number, right there is Animal. The first Animal puppet, much like every Animal variation to come, is just a chaotic mess of red feathery hair, punctuated by two giant eyes and that snaggle-tooth smile with that big wide mouth. The construction of the puppet is literally the gimmick, a tamed, fuzzy beast that comes to life only when he has fever drumming mania, his eyes exploding from the mess of hair like their own punchline. Like literally, his articulated eyebrows are like the best part of this puppet. They make all the funny gags work. Animal kicks off a series of drumming-focused bits on The Muppet Show, starting with Rena Moreno in the first season and escalating to a drum battle with icons like Harry Belafonte in season 3. Each of these moments is just iconic. I love the idea of a master drummer giving a master class in comedy with amazing actors and actresses on The Muppet Show. And fun fact, Ronnie Verrell, veteran drummer for icons like Tom Jones and Tony Bennett, was brought in to puppeteer the arms of Animal's drumming to give it a more realistic vision. So whenever you're watching Animal's drums, he usually is doing a pretty decent job of hitting the right stuff for the music that he's currently playing with. It's great, a trend that they continue to do with Animal. You often hear about a drumming legend here or there coming in to help Animal have better drumming for the puppeteer, and it's awesome. All of the Muppets got a nice revised build for the new movie in 1979, thanks to having that big Hollywood budget. So Animal got rebuilt and sort of tamed, if you ask me. Animal, as a core design, does not change too dramatically over the years. The orange body with the tattered clothing, giant collar with the chaotic frizz, it's all of his defining characteristics. But as we move through his evolution, pay attention to how the puppet design changes with more controlled and intentional feather placement for his hair and for his eyebrows, focusing on bolder eyebrows to make the eyes even more visible and big curly crazy hair to either give the intention of a tamed animal or a wild animal. It really just depends on what the intention is of the scene. And shout out to the giant animal at the end of the showdown in the Muppet movie, because it's an actual 60-foot tall animal puppet that they built on top of a roof, like at an old Western set. It's not a blue screen gimmick where like a puppet's like popping up and like, you know, getting green screened in or whatever. No. They built this giant 60-foot animal. So it's absolutely amazing. Someone has to know where this giant animal head is. It still must be out there somewhere. Someone must still have it. Where is it? Muppets Take Manhattan is one of the best Muppet movies for so many reasons, but perhaps the best reason is the introduction of the Muppet Babies, which are just the best. The Muppet Babies are the best. But if you remember, the 1984 Muppets Take Manhattan did not have an animal baby in the Muppet Baby dream sequence. He was not turned into a baby until the cartoon came out that same year. And I like Animal and Muppet Babies. He's a cool character, and I really appreciate the fact that for the first 3 seasons, he was voiced by Howie Mandel, which is incredible. In fact, when you listen to Baby Animal and Bobby's World, it's Baby Animal and Bobby are essentially the same character.
Me no.
Thank you so much, Howie Mandel, for all your voice acting there. It was really great. And the second half of the show, because eventually Howie left, Animal was voiced by Dave Coulier from Full House. Cartoon Animal was like an 80s comedian magnet, I guess. Muppet Babies Animal is one of the best Muppet Babies, and it's a shame that he was not in Muppets Take Manhattan in that dream sequence. For shame, you Muppet people. But don't worry, we'll get there. To capitalize on their blockbuster movie and hit TV show, the Muppets went on a live tour in 1984 in the same vein as like a Sesame Street Live, with larger-than-life costume character Muppets. And Animal is one of the few characters that I honestly believe translates perfectly to a full-size human, because he already has all the right proportions. The giant head, the long, lanky, dangly arms and legs. This just works perfect with, a tall, lanky dancer, Stick a dancer in an animal body and it makes sense. So much better than Kermit and his long fingers and thick neck. And this show is like a fever dream. I would have given my left arm to have a recording of this show, like some kind of DVD or VHS, something. It's all lost media. We really only have like one news segment and some posters and some images, but we don't have the full recording of this show. It's lost Muppet media. So check out my whole series about Muppet Lost Media for more information on fun Muppet Lost Media. But this is one of the things that's lost out there. We don't really know what the full show was. We only know what the best of bits were. Now, that Muppet tour ran for 2 years, from 1984 to 1985, and in the 1985 version, they had an updated segment that added Muppet Babies. And then a year later, in 1986, the Muppet Babies got their own live tour, taking over for the Muppets live tour that was for the previous 2 years. This is awesome. It's just Muppet Baby insanity. The characters are actually really well done. And toddler Muppets blown up into giant walkarounds, it works. It works way better than adult Muppets blown up into character walkarounds. All of the weird thickness and like odd proportions of toddler bodies, it works. It just works with Muppets, like thick baby Kermit, it just works. It doesn't look weird, unlike thick adult Kermit, which does look very weird.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here!
Muppet Babies Animal looks like an early American colonial like child with the bonnet. I've always thought that. I always thought he belonged in colonial Williamsburg, like with the Pilgrims on Plymouth Rock. It's just a fur baby with a hat. That's really all it is. But for whatever reason, growing up, I always, and even now as an adult, I see Baby Animal and it's like, oh, that's a pilgrim. Pilgrims. Ah, yes, the 1987 Muppets Family Christmas, one of the best specials ever to air. And as a penance for Animal not showing up as a real puppet in the baby dream sequence of Muppets Take Manhattan, they built their own special Muppet Animal baby for this Muppet Family Christmas special that is arguably, like I said, the greatest piece of television ever. They essentially retconned his absence with a Muppet Home Movies section of the special, where we have like a, see guys, we always had a baby animal puppet. We just had him wrapped up in a Christmas present the whole time, which is why he wasn't in the original movie. See, guys? See? Anyway, he's cute. And this is the first of several baby animal puppets, so start learning to change diapers now. And they're animal diapers, so those poops are rough. This guy eats everything. He's like a goat. Here Come the Muppets in 1990 was a live stage show that ran at Disney's MGM Studios as part of a partnership with Jim Henson that ultimately gave us Muppet Vision. R.I.P. R.I.P. Muppet Vision, R.I.P. Jim Henson, R.I.P. all of it. R.I.P. the Muppets. Now, we've seen the giant walk-around costume characters with the Muppet live shows, but these are a little bit different. They're similar, but different in the same way. Now the articulation is way better. The heads open and close their mouths so much nicer, thanks to the really nice handbrake pedals that the puppeteers have hidden in the costume hands to make the mouths open and close. It's really great. And Animal arrives pretty early in the show as the monorail crashes into the stage, releasing all of Electric Mayhem. By the way, that doesn't make any sense. The monorail isn't anywhere near MGM Studios. Anyway, upon arrival, he eats one of the speakers, causing a delay in the finale, and I love this. I mean, Animal is often confusing musical instruments and food, so him eating a speaker, it just makes sense. It just makes sense to me. He's literally the Cookie Monster of rock and roll, He just consumes rock. They used these costumes again for another show, but this time an outdoor show called Swine and Roses that moved and grooved to Broadway tunes. It was a Broadway tunes Muppet show, which is great, But then eventually they were retired. We saw the Kermit and the Piggy, I think, pop up once or twice after this, but otherwise, this is the last time we saw a walk-around full-sized animal character. So, bring these guys back. Bring these guys back immediately. Like over by the rock and roller coaster, new Muppet coaster. Bring me full-size Muppets back. It's time, guys. It's time to bring them back. Bring them back. Let me just say this real quick, that the Muppets doing TV commercials is where they shine best. It's where they first got started. It's where we met most of Muppets. Like Rolf was like a dog food commercial puppet. And so the 2014 Muppets Lipton Tea partnership advertisement might be one of the best pieces of Muppet media we've ever gotten. I mean, it has the most iconic meme in this, Kermit sipping tea. But this is great because this is a very specifically animal-centric commercial, this Lipton commercial, which gives us multiple versions of the weirdo drummer out in the world doing many different jobs. It's just a universe filled with animals. So we get like an old man animal, and then we get a new version of baby animal, an animal calling Miss Piggy Pig.
To the movie theater, please.
Okay, Pig. Is so funny. I don't know what it is about calling Miss Piggy Pig that is so hilarious to me, but it works. It works really well. All right, I gotta say it. I love the 2018 new Muppet Babies. They are just so great. CGI Muppets are just so freaking adorable. I can't get enough of them. And Animal's new look in this is too cute. It's dangerously cute. The fun little printed jacket, the jeans, the bracelets, the tiny little caveman face that you just want to pinch and squeeze. What is not to love about this Animal? It's weird seeing Animal not like with crazy feathery hair, like this is like troll hair. So it's weird not seeing him with like, the feathery fluff. It's just Animal in a rock band, an 80s glam rock band wig. So I guess it works. It does work. It's not like it's bad. It's just I'm used to seeing him all feathered up. And what's nice about this baby Animal is that he has more complex thoughts than he does when he's an adult. And he communicates in this like weird Elmo coded speaking about of himself in third person, animal this, animal that. It's great. I like it. Chaos. I've done it again.
Drums!
It's exactly how early Elmo behaved on Sesame Street, so we know it works. And to find out more about that crazy caveman Elmo, watch my Elmo evolution here. Elmo and Animal have a lot in common, now that I'm thinking about it. They're like both red chaos monsters, but in different ways, in different ways. Now, Disney Jr. did a live-action spin-off of the Muppet Babies CGI show called Muppet Babies Playdate with real puppets, and it's just pure euphoric joy. I can't get enough of these baby puppets, but can we just talk about how huge they are? Look at how large the puppets are compared to the these are like 10-year-old kids, these are like grown children, and they're still smaller than the puppets in some of the scenes. It's wild, but I love Animal Baby Puppet. The feathery hair with that design just is exactly what we needed to chef's kiss. It's perfect. The only thing that I'm kind of missing from this baby Animal is that he can't blink. He doesn't have like the blinky mechanics that every animal puppet has. So I feel like that's a little bit of a miss, and it really neuters his humor, because he can't make like a punchline and then like, do his like his little eyelid business. But, it's cute. It's adorable. It's nowhere near as cute as the next one. So I hope you're prepared for the cuteness overload that's about to come upon you, because this might be the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. The 2023 Muppets Mayhem was a great spin-off of the classic Muppet gang adventure with a fresh focus on the band Electric Mayhem. It's the musician cameo-packed miniseries that was an absolute delight and gave us so many great moments, but perhaps the greatest moment of the show has to be Newborn Animal. Little precious, little perfect, little tiny bundle of joy that was dropped off at Floyd's door, and just look at him in that tiny little diaper with those giant innocent eyes and that huge fluffy mane. He's just like a grumpy little guy. It's just his grumpy little face makes me melt. It's so great to get this little bit of backstory to an otherwise rather mysterious character like what is Animal? Everyone's always like, well, what's Gonzo? Well, what's Animal? He's like a chained up monster that's a drumming beast. But I love it. To think that he was a little abandoned monster that was found, in the night by chosen family that like allows him to make his art and live his best life. It's a very relatable and beautiful story. So I love it. It tickled me to no end. Well, there you go. There is a Muppet History featuring Animal Dan. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh. I'm so sweaty. This is the sweatiest I've ever been after wearing a costume. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Special thanks out there to all of my Patreons for supporting the channel and helping me make incredible art like this. Special thanks to HalloweenCostumes.com for hooking me up with amazing costumes time and time again. Make sure you head on over there and visit my special link to get 15% off your entire order. Thanks for watching, everybody. And as always, hold on, it'll make more sense if I wear this. Thanks for watching, everybody. And as always, you rock! Yeah! Yeah, animal, 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 animal.